Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in House Report number 116-459, offered by Mr. Allen of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1060, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, this Congress is being asked to vote on an enormous spending package after being produced in just the last few weeks. How can the American people possibly have time to learn where their tax dollars are going? Today we are considering amendments to a 4-bill, 689-page package that totals $219.6 billion in discretionary spending, plus another $37.5 billion in emergency spending. The bills in this package spend billions on top of what the current budget agreement allows. And they also contain partisan poison pills like overturning the administration's Mexico City policy and allowing foreign organizations to receive federal funds even if they perform abortions. Let me underscore, under the Democrat majority, we can't even stick to the budget that was agreed to. As a former business owner, and if you talk to any business owner, they will tell you the same thing. You have to operate within a budget. And every day, families across this country are sitting down at the kitchen table making tough choices to live within their means. So I'm appalled by the lack of fiscal responsibility being shown by this body today, as we seem to hold ourselves to a different standard than American workers and families. Unfortunately, that's just business as usual in the 116th Congress. The level of appropriations for State Department and foreign operations, which is what this amendment is specifically targeting, is $8.5 billion higher than fiscal year 2020, an increase of nearly 15%. The bill continues funding normal activities through overseas constituency operations rather than through the normal funding accounts, which is a mechanism that was originally set up to avoid spending constraints. My amendment today is simple. It would reduce state and foreign operations spending by 5% for fiscal year 2021. If you do the math, my amendment would cut about $3.3 billion. Even with my modest 5% cut, this division would still increase spending for fiscal year 21 compared to fiscal year 20. So I believe my Democratic colleagues should support my amendment, since they will still be spending a lot of your hard-earned money just a bit less than they initially intended. I want to be clear, though. I do not want to cut funding going toward our cherished and critical ally, Israel. I also want to note that I believe our diplomatic efforts abroad are necessary. In fact, my son is currently living overseas and working on behalf of our nation's interest. But it is important that we look at the balance sheet and make cuts wherever possible. We can no longer neglect our national debt crisis, and my colleagues must take a serious look at Washington's spending and start to take back control. For the sake of our children and grandchildren, we must act immediately to rein in federal spending so we don't leave our next generation with an insurmountable debt. Mr. Speaker, I'm the proud grandfather of 13 grandchildren with one on the way, and I believe it is my duty to do everything in my power to avoid placing a $26 trillion and rising burden of debt on their backs. My amendment is just a small first step toward bringing fiscal responsibility back to Washington. I urge all my colleagues in this body to support my amendment today, and with that, I reserve.